Hey, this is Mike over at Captain Positivity.
Thank you for calling. This is call center Kevin with
Hey everybody, it's Mike and Kevin, the Outsourcing guys here, and we've got an industry legend with us, Mr. Magazine, Samir Husni, who is joining us today. Thank you for being here. How's everything going today?
Going great. Thanks, Mike and Kevin, for hosting me, and thanks for being your guest. Really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me.
Yeah, absolutely.
We appreciate you. Yeah.
Let's jump right into this. Mr. Magazine, kind of tell us what do you think the future? Prices of paper are going up, but what's the future of magazines going forward, 2023, 2024? What do you see coming up?
You know, there are only two people who can tell you the future: God and a fool. So I know God. So I'm going to tell you from the other guy's point of view. And I always base my predictions of the future on what's taking place now and in the past, because without looking at our past and without looking at our present status, it's useless to talk about the future. And so, in short, as long as we have human beings, we are going to continue to have ink on paper magazines. And my definition of a magazine, if you go to my website and see, it says right under the name Mr. Magazine TM. If it's not ink on paper, it's not a magazine. I mean, you can call the digital platforms anything you want. We never called television, radio with pictures when TV came. And all these creative people out there, can they really find a name like an e-zine, a telezine, something to refer to the digital platform? But magazines as we know them are no longer going to be the norm. I mean, we are going to see a big onslaught, and we are seeing it, of what everybody is now calling them bookazines. I mean, stuff that we used to refer as like special interest publications, whether it's inside your cat's brain, or whether the story of Santa, or whether it is the anniversary of Whitney Houston, like 10 years, she just died 10 years ago, so now we have a magazine for her. And those things are selling really very well on the newsstands, and they are taking over the newsstands. Right. And when I spoke with Doug Olson, who is the chief media officer at A360 Media, and he told me, I mean, he sees the future heading in that direction, especially that the average cover price of those magazines now are $14.99. I mean, almost $15. So that tells you it's no longer an impulse buy.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And that gives hope on the subscription and fulfillment side, because we're still offering the magazines at a much cheaper rate than we offer at the newsstands. So if you really fall in love with something, and like whether it is an Esquire or a GQ or a Better Home and Gardens, rather than buying $5, $6, $7, $8 for an issue, you can get the whole year for still $10 and $12. But the major shift that's going to change is the industry will have a big wake-up call, especially with the headwinds that we've seen in 2022 from the shortage of paper, increase in price of paper, increase in price of postage. You know, all of these things taking place. The industry has to start looking for the customers who count rather than counting customers. I mean, counting customers served us as a good business model for maybe like more than half of the 20th century and the early part of the 21st century. But now you cannot tell your advertiser that you have 1 million readers or 1 million viewers to get an ad. You have to show the advertiser that those million folks are really engaged with you. They have a relationship with you. It's not just like folks who are like you're counting numbers like we used to do when the business was so dependent on advertising. I mean, advertisers today have as many outlets, exactly like their customers, to send their message, to share their message. So we are going to see more and more targeted niche publications that will always have the answer, what's in it for me when I spend that money.
I liked your phrase, and I wrote it down of not counting customers, but customers that count. That really resonated with me. That's great. So I know, Hottie Toddy, that you've retired from Old Miss, and you're on to bigger and better things, like consulting, publishing companies. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the services that you provide to publishing companies that you would consult?
Well, I'm one of those folks who were lucky or predestined. Since I'm a fourth generation Presbyterian, I have to bring like predestination somewhere. That my hobby as a child, buying that first issue of Superman when I was 10 years old, became my education, then became my profession. And I was more than blessed to consult and speak on every continent on the face of this earth, with the exception of Antarctica. I'm still waiting for that ice quarterly or melt quarterly.
I don't think you have jackets big enough to
Right?
Being the cold nature I am, I think it will be my last trip anywhere, going to Antarctica, never coming back. But my areas of specialty have always been, since I've done my dissertation at the University of Missouri, is what makes a magazine succeed, what makes a magazine fail. And because I started as a graphic designer when I followed my hobby, then I went to journalism school. Then when I came to Missouri, I told them I want to study the business side of magazines. And so all my consulting is a wholesome consulting. I look at the magazine as a storehouse, which is the actual definition of what a magazine is. It is a storehouse. And I do not separate between the content, the management, the marketing, the circulation, and the design of the publication. You are entering one store. When you go to Neiman Marcus, you're not going to say, I'm not going to look at this rack, I'm only going to look at that rack. The same thing when you get a magazine in the mail, or when you pick up a magazine from the newsstand, the entire package should leave an impact on you and should start a relationship with you. That relationship in some cases can be just like a one-night stand. Michael Jackson dies, you go and buy a Michael Jackson magazine, you'll probably never buy another Michael Jackson magazine.
Like
you get
the Queen.
The Queen.
Yeah, the Queen Elizabeth. Same thing. You get engaged, you go buy all these bridal magazines, and until you get married, say like, this is it, you stop buying them. So it's more like a love affair. Or you can have a long-lasting relationship where you are getting the New Yorker or the National Geographic or Reader Digest. Those magazines start piling on your coffee table, even if you don't read them, but you have that permanent relationship with them. You want them to keep on coming. And that's why, unless you humanize your magazine, that's what I tell all my clients. And I don't speak any other language besides Arabic and English. So, I consulted in Finland, where the English was my lingua franca with them, but I can't read the magazines. And yet I was able to help reinvent and recreate their magazines. Same thing I did in the Netherlands. Same thing I did in Belgium, in South Africa, in Brazil. You name it. I was able to look at the wholesome picture and talk more about, let's humanize your magazine. If I give you this magic wand and your magazine becomes a human being, describe that human being that is going to come to the homes of your customers and engage in a conversation with them, whether they are seeking advice, whether they are just entertaining you, telling you jokes, or having some good time. So when that magazine comes knocking on your door, you look from the people and say, oh my God, like here she comes again, or you say like, wow, I can't wait until I open the door. And that human being, and we did actually in Finland, in one of the women's magazines that I worked for, we spend a whole day describing who the magazine is, not your audience, because that's the biggest mistake people do. They always start talking about the audience, and the editor always say, oh, but I am the audience. Editors can never be the audience. Editors, you pick up a magazine and all of a sudden you say like, wow, I love this usage of 9-point Helvetica for the captions. No reader is going to say, oh, I'm so in love with the Times Roman, like 16 points that I use it. So the reader's experience is completely different. So I want that magazine, that human being, as a person. And we spent one day in Finland until the entire team agreed that the magazine is going to be like Sarah. She's 35 years old. She's a single mom. She has one kid, part-time job, big, major socialite person, you name it. We wrote the script. Instead of having a media kit, we had a script and we hired a model. So the model was the magazine and the media kit. And she memorized our script and she went with the editor to the ad agencies, in which we introduced them that this talking, walking magazine,
Right.
that at the end of the day is going to be ink on paper, but that's the reality.
Right.
I mean, the response was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so it is our duty, and that's what I do best in my consulting, is humanize the magazines, because no other platform allows you into their home where you provide them. I mean, it's a trusted friend. I mean, we provide the magazine with our credit card number, with our address. I mean, when I send for a subscription and I send my check, I'm giving them my bank account, all my information. They are not stealing it through some digital artificial intelligence gathering, or they are not listening to me. And that's one reason. I mean, and I spoke with a publisher in Atlanta who's now back publishing and launching men's sophisticated magazines, which almost disappeared from the marketplace. And I said, like, why now? I mean, with all what's on the internet. He said, for one simple reason. People are tired from somebody tracing them and somebody tracking everything they do. But when they get the magazine in the mail, it's between them and the magazine. And if they don't like it and they want to hide, they just toss it away and throw it.
Right.
So that trusted friend, unhacked. I mean, again, remember, we're the only unhacked medium. I mean, try to hack a magazine. I mean, if you Google now the coverage of Time magazine of the invasion of Ukraine, most probably you are going to see a picture, a cover of Time magazine with Putin with the Hitler mustache. That was a fake cover. It was never in the printed edition of Time. Somebody came up with this idea, put the fake cover, and start getting all the publicity about, look what the cover of. I mean, how are our future historians going to find out what's real, what's not? With magazines, you can't hack them. What you have, I mean, even with all the warts and mistakes a magazine will have, you can't change it. That's it. You can just like retype and edit. Once it's printed, it's eternal.
That's awesome.
Interesting. That's
cool.
So how do you see in your consulting and stuff, a lot of industries right now are struggling with labor. Is that something you're seeing in the publishing, whether it be just volume of people available or caliber of people? Is that a challenge now?
Well, you know, the majority of new magazines coming to the marketplace today are launched by individual entrepreneurs. I mean, it is sort of like we are going back to the early 20th century when folks like DeWitt Willis, Henry Luce, and Hugh Hefner, individual entrepreneurs, David Smart, who launched like Esquire, Time, Reader Digest. I mean, they did not, all what they had was a vision. They did not have the business background. They didn't have the knowledge of the publishing. They were just like driven with a passionate goal that they want to change the world. They want to have an impact. Then our industry moved into being like, because we were making so much money, we did not know how to spend that money. So we started hiring more people and more people and more people. And a magazine who shall remain nameless, one of the largest magazines we have in the industry, one time interviewed me. 2 reporters interviewed me. A writer called me to check on my interview, and then a fact checker called me after that. And you will think like I have a 4-page article in that magazine. I had 1 line. But all these interviews, because the industry was rolling with money, was printing money.
Right.
Now, with those individual entrepreneurs who still have the passion, but they don't want to get hooked with the large companies' analysis paralysis, that they have to go all through the business deals and budgets and you name it. They don't know. So that's why I just offered a guy that has been calling me, and we were chatting. He wants to launch a new automotive magazine. And I said, you know what? You're the genius behind the idea. You need to find people that will help you execute the idea, because ideas come by the dozen.
Mm-hmm.
And they are worth a dime. It is the execution of the idea. And I don't want to call you executors, but I mean, folks like you, with 032 or the outsourcing guys, or, I mean, you are providing a service to the industry, a service to the future of magazines. Like you are taking the burden of an individual entrepreneur with not much money to bring his or her idea to the marketplace. And that's one reason which, I mean, it's rare for me to recommend anyone or anything outside like working with the magazine. But if I have to be genuine to myself, and if I really want to see the magazine industry to continue, I have to send people to you. I mean, it's as simple as that.
Right.
And just for the record, you're not paying me. You're not a sponsor on my website. I mean, you took me to dinner. So, I mean, just in case, you took me to dinner one time at the CEO magazine conference. But like I told the editor of, the publisher of Maribella magazine, when it was launched by Rupert Murdoch, and I gave sort of like a negative review to the New York Times. I said it's a cheap imitation of the British Marie Claire. So the publisher called me and said, Samir, nobody knows Marie Claire in this country. I said, that's why the New York Times did not call nobody. and said, can I come talk with you? So she came and she met with the chancellor of the university to tell him, like, this professor of yours like said bad things about my magazine. And then I was driving her to the her name was Julia Lewitt Nunenberg, and I was driving her back to the airport. She looked at me in the car and said, Samir, if you play your cards right, I will send you a free subscription to the magazine. So I looked back at her and said, for that price, I don't even play cards. But again, I mean, what kept my business, what kept my hobby for the last technically 60 years, but 40 of them were in these United States of America. What kept my hobby and my profession and my business going is I always said what's on my mind. I mean, I always said what I really feel is best for the magazine, for the content, for the distribution, for everything that has to do with putting those two people, the magazine and the reader, in touch with each other and establishing a relationship.
Yeah. And to go on a little bit more about your point, we always tell our customers we try to help create opportunities. So we're helping them, like you said, bring their ideas,
Entrepreneurs,
with people that can help do that. So that's awesome. Mr. Magazine, thank you for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. Like I said, you're a true industry legend. I've been following you for years, and we really appreciate you joining us, and look forward to seeing you in the future.
Same here. Thank you very much for taking the time, and wishing you all the best. Help those individual entrepreneurs among other folks. I mean, we need those magazines. I need my launch monitor to grow. And unless the magazine makes it to the newsstand, it's not in the launch monitor. So
Thank you, sir.
Right on.
You bet.
See you guys.
Have a good day.